Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining. We're going to give it a few more minutes to let everybody join. We'll probably start at about 6:35. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you again for joining. We're just still giving it a few more minutes for to allow some more residents to join. Thank you.
Hi, this is Donna.
Hi, Donna. Thank you for joining. We are about ready to start now.
My apologies, I could not link in.
Of course, not an issue, not an issue. But now that you're here, we can go ahead and get started. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking time to join us for tonight's DC Plug Initiative Ward 5 Open House meeting. Tonight's meeting will have a special emphasis on two feeders, both located within Ward 5, feeders 14007 and 14008. My name is Peyton Manning from Tina Boyd and Associates, and my team and I are providing additional outreach support on this project. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to provide a brief overview of the DC Plug initiative and an update on the current design activity for the two feeders. As stated before, these projects are located in Ward 5, with feeder 14007 being located in the Brentwood neighborhood and feeder 14008 located in the Woodbridge neighborhood. The primary focus of the project will be the undergrounding of overhead power lines in order to increase resiliency in the area. In this meeting, we also hope to address any questions and concerns that you may have about the design and upcoming construction. First, I'd like to introduce the team that we have present today. From PEPCO, we have the Regional President, Ms. Donna Cooper, Project Manager, Yamani Kadane, and DC Plug's Community Relations Coordinator, Laisha Dougherty. And from the District Department of Transportation, we have Mr. Anthony Soriano, DC Plug's Deputy Program Manager. Anthony Soriano and Yamani Kadane will be leading this evening's meeting. However, before I hand it over to them, I would like to make you aware that this meeting will be recorded so that we can accurately capture your comments and concerns. The team will start by doing a presentation. Everyone's mic except the presenters will be muted during the presentation to avoid any background noise. If you have any questions throughout the meeting, we would ask that you leave them in the question and answer section at the bottom right of your screen, and we will address all questions at the end of the meeting. To open up the presentation, I'll be sharing a brief video with you which highlights the DC Plug Initiative's process when undergrounding these power lines.
The District of Columbia has experienced more violent storms in recent years, resulting in extensive power outages. For this reason, the district and PEPCO are working to reduce power outages by moving many of the overhead power lines underground to improve the infrastructure and enhance resiliency. Neighborhoods affected by construction will be notified well in advance of the project start date. This will include the posting of no parking signs. Construction will begin with the coordination of streets and sidewalks impacted in your neighborhood. Signs will be posted, and flaggers will direct vehicles and pedestrians around construction crews. Before any digging begins, other existing utility lines that may be in the path of construction will be carefully identified and marked in the field. In some cases, small plants, trees, and grass will need to be removed from public spaces to allow for digging and placement of new underground equipment. But we will do our best to retain as much vegetation as possible. Any public property disturbed by this work will be restored to its original condition. Construction workers will use asphalt saws to cut the pavement. A backhoe will dig a trench for the placement of the distribution line. Periodically along the main primary line, manholes and tap holes will be required to house equipment and to provide access for inspections and repairs. The backhoe will also be utilized in these cases to excavate for these structures. In order to meet jurisdictional safety requirements, shoring will be provided in the trench to ensure stability. PEPCO uses either fiberglass or plastic PVC conduit to protect underground power lines. Concrete will be poured into the trench to encase and secure the conduit, and steel plates will be placed over the trench temporarily to make the road usable to vehicle traffic. After the concrete is set, the steel plates will be removed and the trench will be repaved in sections. Transformers, switches, and other ancillary equipment will be set in place. Equipment such as transformers and switches will be installed either in the roadway or the sidewalk, depending on space availability. Underground cable will be installed. Landscaping will be restored as needed and roads paved. Overhead primary electric wires will be removed from poles, but secondary service and communication lines will remain. Finally, the new underground power lines will be energized. While electricity will remain on throughout the project, there will be a short scheduled outage needed to switch from the overhead lines to the new underground system. We appreciate your patience while the district and Pepco improve the future of electrical service for the District of Columbia residents.
Great, and I will now be passing it over to Pepco's Regional President, Ms. Donna Cooper.
Thank you very much, Peyton. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us on this evening to discuss the DC Powerline Undergrounding Initiative. Just wanting to share a little bit of background about this initiative. It goes back many years, and really this task force was established in 2012 to really examine how we could make our infrastructure more resilient to address an increase in weather events that were occurring. During that time, the District of Columbia and the region, and even going further north as well as west, had experienced the derecho, which was how I qualify it. Well, it was almost like a hurricane on land. Regardless of the fact that we were in the process of really enhancing our infrastructure, a lot of it in wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 is overhead. So regardless of all of the upgrades that we were making, you were still yet going to be exposed to significant impacts because you had the overhead infrastructure. So we were looking for opportunities in order to underground more of our infrastructure. So during that period, Mayor Gray was in office at that time, and working along with Pepco, a task force was created, and that particular body was comprised, I would say, of the Office of the People's Counsel, the Public Service Commission, representatives of the Council of the District of Columbia, your utility providers, and also largely key departments. One predominant is the Department of Transportation in the District of Columbia. And the work that we were undertaking was looking to see what could we do to evaluate how to make our system even more resilient in the face of climate change. That unprecedented task force worked together for, I would say, about a year in order to come up with a plan. And more importantly, when we talk about a plan, undergrounding your infrastructure, there's a cost to doing so. But we wanted to find a way in order to do this that would make it affordable for customers, bring down that particular cost, and it led to a public-private partnership. And with that particular public-private partnership, we had to move legislation in order for this to be advanced. Legislation was advanced around, I would say, 2014, but it had to be re-upped in 2017, and that was moved and signed by Mayor Muriel Bowser. But I wanted to recognize, because this is Ward 5, Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie. The legislation was referred to his committee, and he was very strong as well in advancing the legislation that has operationalized DC Plug. And one of the key elements of that legislation that he focused significantly on was ensuring that as we're executing this work and this project, because it is a $500 million multi-year project, that certified business enterprises were going to be meaningfully involved, and that's in a substantial way, 100% participation of certified business enterprises. So that was one key piece that he advanced in the legislation. Also ensuring that there were career opportunities for individuals who were district residents. So in 2017, the legislation was passed with those particular provisions. One aspect of the legislation that's key is that we are a regulated utility. So that means that anything that we're proposing ultimately has to go to our Public Service Commission, which is our oversight body and regulatory body for approvals. We have to file what is known as biennial plans with the commission, where we're proposing feeders to underground in these respective wards. And the commission will evaluate those particular proposals and make determinations. We recently filed our third biennial plan with the commission. And with that particular plan, as I indicated, We're focusing on wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, because if you look at the other wards in the District of Columbia, the infrastructure that is supplying service and electricity is already underground overwhelmingly. So right now I'm excited because we're here to talk about feeders that will be underground in Ward 5. So I look forward to the presentation and most importantly to any questions that you may have. The project does take time to execute because of the nature of the work, but it's critical and important that we're coming to you timely so that you know about the project, the timeline for execution, and also ensuring that there is ongoing communications and you will have contact information for us, because the last thing that we want to do is come into a community with a project, even though it's longer term actually to when shovels will be in the ground, but come into a community, individuals do not know about the project, see the residual impacts of that work, and we're not engaged and we're not coordinating. So I'd like to turn it over to Yamani as well as Anthony to really lead the presentation. So thank you for the opportunity to present on this evening.
Thank you very much, Donna. Good evening, everyone. This is Yamana Kidana. I'm the project manager for DC Plug from Pepco side. As Donna has discussed, this is a $500 million DC power line underground. We call it DC Plug. Now that is shared, $250 million portion of that is funded through Pepco. The other 187.5 portion of that is funded through the district, and then the remainder of that $500 million, the $62.5 million, is funded through the DDOT capital improvement funding. Now, those funds are recovered through a surcharge on our customer bills, and the way they're recovered is indicated here. So the scope of DC Plug. So DC Plug is actually a resiliency project that provides resiliency against major storms. It's a multi-year program to underground up to 30 of the most vulnerable overhead feeders. And then it's focused in Ward 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, as Donna indicated. So it's a multi-year program. It's going to take 6 to 8 years, and we have started construction on our first feeder in June 2019, and our first feeder is in service right now. Next slide, please. Now on this animation and the following animation, we'll look at the scope of DC Plug. What does really DC Plug do? We're going to underground the primary main lines and the primary laterals so that we are providing resiliency against major storms. Here you can see at the middle top of the page, you can see a tree line falling and hitting the primary lines, and then as the color change from green to red, that means their houses, they're not getting power. Their power is been taken out of their space by the tree falling. Now, by undergrounding those primary lines and then the lateral lines, we're going to achieve a resiliency. If you go to the next page, you're going to see the difference in how many houses are going to change rate. So the same configuration, the only difference here is the primary line and the laterals are being taken underground. Now, if the same tree falls, the houses remain green. That means they're still gonna have power because we have undergrounded the lines. Now, the only thing that we're not undergrounding is the secondary lines, which are going to remain overhead, but the secondary lines will only supply power to a very limited number of houses, so the impact is not going to be significant. Also, the communication lines will also remain overhead. So that's the general scope of DC Plug. Wherever we're building the undergrounding project, we're going to underground the primary main line and the primary lateral line. And then with that, I'll pass it on to Anthony Soriano from DDOT.
Great. Thank you so much, Yamani. As noted earlier, my name is Anthony Soriano, the Deputy Program Manager for the DC Plug Initiative with DDOT. And looking at this slide here, you'll see the general footprints of both feeder projects, 14007 on the left, which touches the Brookland, Michigan Park, and Woodridge neighborhoods, and 14008 on the right, which is in Brentwood. Next slide, please. Here we have our current timeline and status. Projects kicked off back in February and April of 2021, respectively. We've gone through several design phases. There's been meetings with our Ward 5 council member, various ANC meetings, both held in June. Currently, we're attending our open house public meeting today on the 24th of February. We expect our 100% design submissions in April and March of this year, followed by the final plan, specification, and estimate packages in June and April of this year, respectively, which is what we advertise for bids to get our construction contracts in place. Next slide, please. Our feeder 14007 and 008 construction timelines. We have civil construction right now targeted to begin in spring of 2023 for 14007 and the winter of 2023 for 14008. Right now, we're anticipating approximately 18 months of construction duration. As you saw previously, the footprints of these projects is rather large. So it won't necessarily be 18 months in every location, but the projects will progress throughout those footprints and take approximately that duration to complete. Following the civil construction, Pepco's electrical contractors will mobilize to do the appropriate and necessary electrical work, which will include the installation of the cables, the equipment, the de-energizing of the overhead lines while re-energizing the underground, and then ultimately removal of the overhead primaries and cutting of the top portions of any utility poles possible. Yamani did note, though, that the poles will remain as there's existing secondary lines and communication lines that need to remain overhead. Electrical completion for both these projects, looking at the spring of 2025 for 14007 and then winter of 2024 for 14008. And as noted, this is all subject to change. We obviously would love to minimize bring the durations down when possible. So we're always looking for ways to achieve that. But this is what we have anticipated at this time. Next slide, please. Project scope, what you'll see happening in and around your neighborhood when the work is going on is erosion and sediment control. So inlets will be protected as the excavation occurs. There's saw cutting in advance of the excavation of the trenches. That saw cutting will generate some sediment. We make sure that we protect the inlets to minimize the amount of that sediment that would enter the storm drain system. You'll also see tree protection going up. You actually can see in the top right photograph, there's an example of tree protection there. So that'll be happening throughout the project as it moves. We'll have the actual installation of the civil infrastructure, which includes the duct bank, the electric manholes, tap holes, transformer enclosures. Following the installation of our civil infrastructure, we'll restore the roadway, restore any of the pavement markings that were disturbed. Maybe there's some improvements that will occur as well. If there's deficient crosswalks, we might look at coordinating improvements to those with our work as well. And then, as noted previously, the electrical work will follow the completion of our civil work. Next slide, please. Here you'll see a few examples of the finished products. Top left is a transformer enclosure that's located within the green space between the curb and the sidewalk in a location for the previous project. Top right is a switch manhole within sidewalk where you see the frame and cover of the access point for that structure. And then the bottom photo is a tap hole. For general size, you can say that well, you could see from the green strip, the space between the curb and the sidewalk, that's approximately 3.5 to 4 feet. The length along the long side parallel to the curb and sidewalk is about 6 feet in that transformer enclosure. Our tap holes is roughly a 3 foot by 3 foot square. And then the access point on that frame and cover for the manhole is about a 32 inch to 30, approximately 32 inch diameter, typical manhole cover. Next slide, please. So here's a closer image of our feeder 14007. This is generally bound by 14th Street to the west, Monroe to the south, 25th Street on the east, and Varnum Place to the north. Just give you a minute to, there you go. Now, the next slides that we're going to go through, and there's several that are showing our proposed footprint of the actual pathway of the duct bank and the locations of the structures as they currently stand within our designs. One thing to note is that all of this work is taking place within the public right-of-way. There may be areas where we do excavate and install duct bank and structures behind curb, but again, I'll reiterate that this is all within the public right-of-way, public space. Now, certain areas may be maintained by the private property owners. It's in the contracts that, I mean, aside from where a structure is installed, the surrounding area is to be restored to its pre-construction conditions. If you do have an interest in seeing some of this, particular to your address, your location, there's going to be some contact info shared later on in the presentation, and I'd recommend reaching out through that channel so that we can have a more one-on-one interaction. It'll be easier than trying to pinpoint it through these slides. We'd be happy to do that. And again, those the contacts will be provided later on. Here, similarly, we have the feeder 14008 map, which is the project is bound by W Street to the south, Brentwood Road northeast to the northwest, and Montana Avenue northeast to that northeast side. Again, here you'll see the pathway of the duct bank in the lighter blue, structure locations in a darker blue as we move through this project's area in the Brentwood neighborhood. And noting again, all of our work is taking place within that public right-of-way and not on any private property. So maintenance of traffic during construction, we're going to make sure that we maintain accessibility for residents and businesses. It's required that any emergency no parking signs are installed a minimum of 72 hours in advance. We'll also be reaching out regularly with our kind of project forecast schedule to areas that will be impacted in advance of our work, so that we give as much notice as possible, even greater than the 72 hours parking notice that you'll see. Safe accommodations for the pedestrians and cyclists is critical. So any impacts that would require altering routes, we'll have proper notification, and those safe accommodations will be made throughout our project. And as you see in the final bullet there, our outreach team is going to be coordinating with residents and stakeholders throughout the construction. I'd like to say that you might get tired of us with the amount of information we provide you, but we feel it's important, and we want to make sure that you're informed every step of the way. Next slide, please. This will show you some general maintenance of traffic configurations. These are just general. There's about 4 slides that show various setups that you might see. We have approved maintenance of traffic plans, or maintenance of traffic plans will be approved for each of these projects. That'll and then you'll see these various configurations throughout your neighborhood. At this point, it ends my portion of the presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Laisha Doherty, who's going to present on our communications and outreach. Thanks so much.
All right. Yes. So good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us and for the opportunity to tell you about our education plan or the integrated communication strategy for DC Plug. So our education plan is something that we have filed with the Public Service Commission. It is our strategy for providing outreach to you all, both in the design and the construction phase of the project. What we like to do is we like to communicate with the residents during the design phase in case there needs to be any design changes, as well as during the construction phase. So right now we are in what we call the design phase of the initiative. And so what we have done is we have already met with the Ward 5 council member, and we have already attended the impacted ANCs. And then the community open house in which we are having right now is what we do in the next phase of the design. Following this open house, we do some targeted outreach to any customers that are impacted by our transformer enclosures. And we then sum it up by a final meeting with the ANC and also an opportunity for any residents to ask any questions. Once we start construction, we do have a 30, 15, 7-day strategy in which we do deliver door hangers. We try to, execute outbound phone calls. We do offer residents an opportunity to do walkthroughs or individual meetings with the teams, et cetera. So we really want to make ourselves accessible, and we like to communicate as early and as often as possible. Common collateral that we use social media outreach. So right now we are tweeting or posting things through both PEPCO and DDOT social media channels. The undergrounding video, what you all have seen previously. Project fact sheets. We do update the project fact sheets. We have an overall DC Plug project fact sheet. Then we have individual feeder fact sheets, which you all will be receiving once construction starts. Flyers and door hangers, which is how you probably were alerted to this meeting today. We do have worksite signs, which are signs that once construction starts, they have the actual DC Plug logo on them with all of our contact information in the event that you have any questions about what work is going on your block. You'll know for sure if it's DC Plug or not because of the dedicated worksite signs. We also have a project hotline, a project website, and a project email address to answer any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. And here is our contact information. Again, our website, our email address, and our phone number, and the dedicated social media channels that we use via Twitter. I saw that there was a comment about a bus route and working with WMATA. So the engineering team can speak to that, but from a communications perspective, we do work with WMATA to put up advertisements at the bus shelters and also on bus routes so that individuals who ride those buses or use those bus stops will know that the project is ongoing in their neighborhood. That concludes the communications portion. I will pass it back over to you, Peyton.
Great. Thanks so much, Laisha. We'll now open up the meetings for a Q&A session, again, where we would ask that you put any questions you have in the chat or in the Q&A box to the right of your screen. And if you're calling in on a phone, you can press *3 to raise your hand, and we will unmute you as we get those coming through. We do already have a few questions in the chat, so I will go ahead and start reading through those. So our first question is, I live on Monroe Street Northeast on the affected area for feeder 14007. How long should we expect to have parking closed on our block?
This is Anthony Soriano. I'll respond to that question. There's no simple answer. I'm sorry, my audio. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you now. You cut out for a second, but you're back.
Okay, I apologize. My headphones went out, but you can still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Again, apologies. So in general, the work takes place in various phases. The contractor will do the installation of the erosion sediment control, installation of tree protection. You will not, you should not experience any impacts to your parking during that. When they have to excavate within the roadway, there'll be that 72 hours advance notice of areas that parking will have to be restricted to allow the work to occur. Excavation rates may vary depending on the what's included underground. So it could be a day of impact. It could be multiple days. We can look at your area a little closer and try and get a better idea. But the best I could say is that, you know, maybe a week could be expected as they progress through a block. So again, I'm sorry I don't have any specific, you know, time, but I think if we look closer at a specific area, we might be able to get a better idea.
Great. And like you said, there will certainly be that communication before there's any closure from the communications team. And then also, Anthony, I know Laisha kind of touched on this, but as far as working with WMATA and rerouting potential bus routes, is there anything that you want to speak to on that?
Thank you. So with each phase of our design, we interact with WMATA as one of our stakeholders that reviews our plans. At this time, I'm unaware of any rerouting as a result of the project. As noted in the MOT plans, we look to maintain traffic. If it's a two-way street, we would look to maintain two directions of traffic throughout the work, but making sure that there's a safe work zone. But again, as we get closer to our final design, if we do have any impacts, WMATA would be aware. Adjustments to bus stops, specific bus stops will be noted. Proper notification will be given, but the intention is to not make not have any impacts to those WMATA bus routes. Great question. Thank you. Both questions.
Okay, and then we also have a question about the tap holes and what specifically the tap hole is. Could you, I know you talked on that a little bit, but could you elaborate?
Can you repeat that question, please, Peyton?
Yeah, no, the resident wanted to know what a tap hole is specifically.
I'll let Pepco respond.
Yes. So what we're doing in the undergrounding process is we're building the civil infrastructure, basically the manholes and the conduits, and then we're pulling the cable, and then we're also installing electrical equipment. So electrical equipment includes transformers that we are undergrounding, switches. And tap holes are like a type of switch, basically, you know, where you can switch between one feeder to another. So you look at it as a switch. It's connection points. Okay, that's what a tap hole is.
Great, thank you so much, Yamani. And then also we have a question. Your slides indicate that the work would be done in both the roadbed and the park strip. Does this mean that sidewalks will be removed during this period? Or perhaps how the sidewalks may be impacted through construction?
Sure. Again, there might be instances where we have to excavate across a sidewalk or impact the sidewalk. Accommodations for pedestrians will be made, but no sidewalks will be removed permanently. The sidewalk pathway would be restored at the end once the excavation and any installation is complete.
Thank you, Anthony. And then I believe you touched on the buses being detoured. That'll just be a communication between WMATA and the construction team when that time comes. And then we have a question. I'm on the 1600 block of Monroe Street Northeast, if that makes it easier. Oh, I'm sorry. And I think that's it. I see that Ms. Vivica Brooks has her hand raised. We can go ahead and unmute you if you still want to chat.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I was trying to locate the chat on my phone, but I can just
Oh,
speak it. So
not an issue.
I do see on the dcplug.com website
Mhm.
that the Ward 5 area, you list 3 affected neighborhoods. And I'm actually in the Brentwood neighborhood and received your flyer, which prompted me to join the call this evening. So is there any work scheduled for the Brentwood area, or would it just be Brooklyn, Michigan Park, and Woodridge? Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, Peter 14008 is in the Brentwood neighborhood. That's the one that the project is bound by Montana Avenue, W Street, and Brentwood Road. I don't know, Peyton, if you want to flip back to
Yeah, I can slide back in the presentation and we can
that
take a
might
look.
help. Oh, but if that was a phone caller, I don't know if that necessarily would help.
Oh, no, she said she was on the app, so this should help. And also, Ms. Brooks, the flyer you have should show the outline of the project as well, I believe. But there's been a few versions that have gone out, I know as well. So, but here are the 2 that we're referring to, Anthony.
Okay. And so would that mean that when I look on DC plug info and it says that it just doesn't list the Brentwood area, or are we comprised within one of those 3 neighborhoods that are listed? I guess I'm confused because I do see it on the map that you're showing now, but
Mhm.
if I'm going to go to your website to get up-to-date information, I just want to make sure I know how to notate it, how it's notated.
Gotcha. The website may
Yeah.
need to be up.
Yeah, I can add to that. So so Ms. Brooks, so we so on the website, so what we have here is we have feeders 14007 and 14008, and I believe that one is in our first biennial plan and one is in our second biennial plan. And so we are in the process of updating their website, and please forgive me that I have not added those neighborhoods to it. But the map is the most accurate. The map shown here is the most accurate list of streets and neighborhoods, and we'll do our best to update the website as best as possible.
All right. Thank you both. Appreciate that information.
Great. And also I see, and did you have anything else, Ms. Brooks?
No, I did not. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. And I see that Mr. Bridge also has his hand raised, and perhaps we can unmute him and give him an opportunity to speak.
Oh, thank you so much. First, I just want to say how
Thank you.
excited I am for this. I lived in Brookland during the derecho. I remember all the time without the power. We're really excited for some increases in reliability in Brookland. So please, don't take my questions as critical of this effort, which I know is super important. One of the things that I was trying to understand out of all of this is that Monroe Street is fairly narrow. It is barely 2 lanes of traffic and parking on just one side of the street. So my concern about the flow of the G8 bus is going to be, determinant on, how that's going to affect our neighbors. I want to make sure to tell all of our neighbors who, I'm really surprised there are very few people at this meeting, if only because this is really exciting stuff. I know that civic meetings are super, everyone's idea of a really great time. But in terms of how this affects our neighborhood, I'm really excited. I'm hopeful that you guys will redouble your efforts for social media and email lists and other ways of reaching Ward 5 residents who are affected by this. I found out about this by accident this morning. I don't recall receiving a flyer in person. I know that, this was brought up at the ANC and I apparently missed that meeting. I'm sorry. But I would say that there are a lot of people who really need to hear about this. And I really hope that you guys redouble your campaign to reach every affected resident.
Great. I appreciate that feedback. And we'll
Yeah.
certainly get the website updated and whatnot too. And hopefully more residents can find the information there as well. And I know somebody else was speaking. I'll let them.
Apologies, Peyton. Yeah, it was Anthony. I just wanted to thank Mr. Bridge for those comments and that feedback, and making sure that we will work with WMATA on understanding any impacts, and it might require alternative work hours to be considered if necessary. But no, I appreciate that input, and it's noted, and we'll be sure to communicate any adjustments that might follow.
I did have one follow-up related to that. I think I saw on the there were the slides around where the actual work with the excavation was going to be done. I saw some very worrying lines that affect me and my neighbor. And so you had said that there should be a way to reach out for more detailed versions of that so that we can understand that process. Should I just be emailing questions at dcpluginfo.com? Where does that go?
So we do check the questions at we the whole team has access to that website. I'm sorry, to the email address.
Yeah, so if you send in an email, we'll make sure that it gets to the most reliable party to answer any questions or concerns you may have. And was there anything else, Mr. Bridge, or?
Just thanks. I appreciate it.
Great, no, thank you. And we have one more question that just came through. How can residents find the webpage if they are, especially if they are not able to access the website, especially the elderly? And Laisha, you may have a good answer for that, but I mean, I think certainly there's always the campaigns going with door knockers to make sure everybody stays in the loop for project updates outside of just via the website.
Absolutely. So we do our best to make sure that we are inclusive on our communication strategies, which is why we do also do the delivery of the door hangers.
And also, Laisha, it appears you may have a few questions in your direct chat. If you could address those, or if you, I don't know if you see those or not.
I do. I was going to tell you, but I didn't realize they were for me. All right. So Kelly, hi Kelly. Kelly is from Councilman McDuffie's office. The first question is, when you say restore the tree box area, does that mean just with sod or with existing like plantings that a owner may have planted? Yamani Anthony.
The goal is to replace or to restore. It might be coordinating with the owner to temporarily replant those privately planted items that are in the public space to ensure that they're preserved and protected if the owner has been maintaining them. We'd be happy to meet individually to look at it.
All right. The next question is, what about poles in the alley? Will those be undergrounded and alleys be repaved? And will that be all in one day since people park off the alley?
So I don't know. I'm not sure if we have any undergrounding in the alleyways. I don't know if Imran recalls that, but we, like I said, we are undergrounding the main lines and the laterals. Usually, these lines go along the main roads, not in the alleyways. But I know there's some exceptions where we have those lines in the alleyways in very smaller footage.
All right. And the next question, will Pepco do vibration study and work with property owners on any damages to their property from the vibrations from digging and undergrounding?
DDOT has various protocols regarding vibrations. We're going to make sure that anything that's required statutely or is followed. We don't have anything defined specifically for the program, but it is something that we're aware of. Not only vibration, but noise is something that's also a concern of ours.
All right, that concludes the questions that I've received.
Great. And that appears to conclude the questions that we received so far. So as everybody's mentioned so far, we really want to make sure that we stay in good communication with everybody. So, and for the people calling in, the email that we've been referring to is questions@dcpluginfo.com. So any questions or concerns you have, feel free to send us an email. And then also you can call in at 1-844-758-4146. Again, that's 1-844-758-4146.
And Peyton, do you mind just dropping your email address as well?
Of course, of
Thank
course.
you.
So, and if anybody wants, I can put it in the Q&A so everybody can find it. And then my email address, if anybody wants to contact me directly or CC me, is Peyton, Peyton, at tbaconnects, connects.com. So any questions you may have in regards to either of these feeders, you can send to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. And if not, I'll certainly get it to the person that can. Then other than that, after the meeting, we have a brief Title VI survey for you guys to fill out. You can access the survey by going to rebrand.ly/DCplugWard5-comments. If you're accessing this meeting from a computer, you'll be automatically redirected to the survey once the meeting is closed. The questionnaire is used to help DDOT ensure that we are able to conduct these meetings in a non-discriminatory manner and in compliance with the Title VI, and we greatly appreciate all feedback. Here's a slide. You can either scan the top right of the screen to get access to it, or like I said, when the meeting closes out, you'll be redirected to the website. Again, I just want to check and make sure there's no more questions coming through or any hands raised. I don't see anything. So thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. We wish you and your families good health, especially during these times. This will conclude tonight's meeting.